Alrighty, hey everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are back, Elite Performer Club Season 2. Tim, Michael, how are you guys today?
Fantastic, my man. Thank you so much.
Man, I couldn't be any better. If any better, I'd be you too.
100%. Oh man, well, we are so excited to have this going on today. I'm going to let people join here just for the next couple of minutes. But I know today, big topic is going to be how to master multilining, how to get more products bundled in, included in those conversations, both with the sales team and the service team. So Michael, I'm going to save your introduction here just for a couple of minutes till we have, everybody a chance to join. But, before we introduce you, I did want to ask you guys one quick question, if you're ready.
Sure. Let's go for it.
All right, Tim, what are you most looking forward to today?
Oh man, so this is my first time actually getting a chance. I've talked to Mike many different times. This is the first time I'm getting to see him live, and he's given tidbits, but he's always told me, he said, "Hey Tim, I'm a different guy when I'm live. I'm a different guy when it's time to do what I do. I'm different." I said, "Oh my God," so I'm excited, man. I'm excited to see what he's gonna give the people. I've told a lot of people about this. There are a lot of people who know Mike, they love us. And to have this type of collaboration to provide a different type of value to agents, as well as the employees who want to be agents themselves in the future, this is where to be today. I'm excited about that.
100%. And Michael, I'll ask you the same question. What are you most excited about today before we get started here?
Man, my whole goal today is to give some golden nuggets to change some insurance professionals' lives, brother. I'm just appreciative of the opportunity. I'm very excited to come on, teach some strategies around how agents can be more successful in 2023, man, so they can crush their goals.
I love it. I love it. Awesome, guys. Well, we'll let people continue to come in here as we roll on today. We're also in about 5 minutes here going to be actually making this available on Facebook Live as well. So we look forward to getting that up and rolling. Just wanted to make sure that our core audience here was all set and we didn't have any problems. Just for everybody in attendance, if you could drop real quick in either the chat or even the Q&A, we're indifferent, just where you're located and what type of agency you have, whether you want to put the specific, company name, you want to put the type of insurance that you guys sell, just so we can get a better idea of who we have, here with us today. And if you notice, there's also a Q&A section if you're watching on Zoom that's built directly in, and we will be answering questions and leave room for that a little bit closer to the end. I think that we might have chat need to get enabled here in just a minute. But Q&A, it looks like is working. So feel free to jump in the Q&A. We got Dustin, State Farm agent in Pensacola, Marilyn Monroe. Man, that's a solid name, for a State Farm. Heather calling in from San Antonio. Awesome. Yeah, if you guys keep it coming, that would be great. But without further ado, you guys ready to get started?
Absolutely, my man.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Awesome. So if you guys are new to anybody on this call, just some brief introductions. My name's Andy. Also sitting with me is Tim, and both of us are over here at Team Hired. We're a insurance-specific recruiting firm founded by a couple former mega agents. Take tremendous pride in what we do, and we have a lot of clients, Michael, joining us today, and some non-clients as well. So we're excited to have you guys, our Team Hired clients. And then introducing the man, the myth, and the legend, Michael Weaver. So Michael's a lot of things. Michael is an author. He's authored books. He's a major podcaster. He's got a podcast called The Insurance Buzz. Brings in some amazing speakers. Does some great topics. Make sure you guys go check that out. Entrepreneur, obviously serial entrepreneur, and president of the Weaver Sales Academy. So this is, Michael, you can explain some more, but a sales training organization specifically for insurance professionals. And some things that really stood out to Tim and I early on was just what a bang up career Michael had with State Farm. He entered the market almost a decade ago, won multiple awards as a State Farm agent, including Rookie of the Year, was a 5-time Chairman Circle agent, exotic travel agent, and President's Club agent, among other things. And I also think just an amazing human being. And we really, really appreciate having you here today with us. With that said, Michael, we're going to kind of give you the microphone today because I know you have a lot of fire to bring on this multi-lining topic, and also just how to prepare yourself and recession-proof your business from anything that might be happening externally. So we're super excited to hear from you. We can funnel questions closer to the end. I'll give you like a 15-minute warning and we can do it at that point. But without further ado, Michael, great to have you. Welcome.
Yeah, Andy and Tim, thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity today. So before I get started, one thing I like to always do is start every training, every live event I do off with an attitude of gratitude practice. So if you could, please put in the Q&A or the comment section one thing you're grateful for today. The reason why I do that is because, look, number one, you all have the most noble profession in the world, but you deal with folks on their worst day. You have a lot of negative energy that comes into the office, into your life. And so if you can constantly remind yourself of all the good things going on in your life, of all the good things going on with your family, it helps remind you when you are dealing with those bad times with that negative energy, hey, 95, 98, 99% of my day, 98% of my life is actually really great. And so if you could, please, please, please put something in the chat or the Q&A of something you're grateful for today. Now, again, my name is Michael Weaver, president of Weaver Sales Academy. Now, before we get into Weaver Sales Academy, and Tim and Andy, I appreciate your the bio you read, all the accolades. Just like they said, my career started just like many of you at the age of 22 as a producer working with an agent. I didn't really know anything about insurance besides, hey, I could make a lot of money, I could have a lot of wealth, and that meant security to me. And so as a producer, I really started to study the game of sales, hiring coaches, trainers. Brian Tracy was one of my favorites. I had on the CD player all the time. And we started doing, me personally, 70 to 100 policies a month every single month. And then what happened is my wife and I got married, and we ended up starting a scratch agency about 2 months after we got married in 2014. And that success, although not always easy, continued to roll over into agency. And it was a true scratch agency. We never got an assignment. We never acquired any other business. And in a rural town of 8,000 people, low premium market, the average auto was like $300 every 6 months. We were growing at $1 million in premium a year, every single year for really the first 6 years we were in the business. Now I say that not only were we growing, but we are also profitable. We never really did internet leads. And so not only were we growing exponentially, but we were making great money at the same time. We were living what we thought was the dream. However, many of the peers were not that way. And so in 2018, we formulated Weaver Sales Academy, which is a sales training and coaching organization for insurance professionals just like you. We also went on to open other sales organizations as well. And in 2022, so January of this year, we actually hung everything up to focus solely on Weaver Sales Academy. And what we really do at Weaver Sales Academy, so we've helped over 7,500 insurance professionals since our start date in 2018. Currently, we work with 4,400 active insurance professionals across the country. It does not matter if you are independent, if you are captive, if you sell auto, fire, and life, we are the training organization from you. Why most people work with Weaver Sales Academy, most insurance professionals like you, is because they're struggling. They're frustrated. Their team's frustrated. They're not making the money they thought they would make. They don't really have processes for the office. They're not growing their book of business. They don't have the processes. And so we help agents go from frustrated to confident, from struggling to success. I'm sure many of you can relate to that. I'm sure many of you may not be making the money you thought. You may be going into debt. You're not hitting the travel trips. You don't have necessarily the freedom. You're actually working way more in the business than you ever planned. And that's really what we specialize in at Weaver Sales Academy. And one of those things that we specialize in is the conversation. So the same conversation that allowed me as a producer to work internet leads, because that's what I did as a producer, to write 100 policies a month, every single month, the same conversation that helped our insurance agency grow by $1 million a year in premium and have great financial services premium every single year, qualified for all the trips. But more importantly, the same conversation that has also helped those 7,500 insurance professionals that we've worked with over the last 5 years go from struggling to success, go from, hey, I don't know how I'm going to pay the bills, to, hey, we're straight crushing it. It's this conversation that we're going to be reviewing today. Now, this is just a small piece of the success equation that you have within your agency. And so I'm going to be going over this from start to finish, everything from the elevator pitch to rapport building to hot button, the how-to. All right, this is just not ideas. This is just not strategy. I'm going to be also teaching the how-to. How are we going to incorporate life insurance into that multi-line sales conversation? How are we going to be making sure that, hey, every auto quote gets a fire quote along with the financial services quote? That's what we do. And so what I would ask of you is at the end of this conversation, because you're going to get value out of this conversation, you're going to get some golden nuggets, you're going to get takeaways, I can guarantee it. But if you think that this conversation aligns well with your agency moving forward in the future and can help you all take your goals and crush them, take your team from, hey, I don't really know what I'm doing to, hey, I know exactly what I'm doing, they're clear on their vision, please reach out. So you can go to weaversalesacademy.com, www.weaversa.com. You can also reach out to me on my email, michael@weaversa.com. We'd love to have a conversation with you. And what I would tell you, what we are not the type of company that is going to teach you how to be product pushers. We're not the type of company that's going to teach you to be used car salesmen. We're not the type of company that's going to teach you, hey, just bundle a bunch of shit, give it to the customer. Maybe they buy if you're saving them money, maybe they don't. That is not us. What we are is we are a company that's going to teach you how to ask the right questions, how to have a value-based conversation with your customer, give them more coverage, give them more products, and have the ability to close regardless of the price. That's what we do at Weaver Sales Academy. We want you not only performing at high levels, we want your team not only crushing it, but most importantly, we want you to love what you do. We want you to have a passion about it, and we want you to feel good about what you do. Because if you're just out here product pushing, that's going to lead to burnout, because you're going to be frustrated, because you're not going to have passion. You're not going to love what you do. You have to have a love for what you do, and it actually has to mean something. So grab a pen and paper. We're going to get started. If you have questions, please put it in the Q&A or the chat. I'll get to that at the very end of this. All right. So let's start off with, again, we're going to go through the whole conversation. So the very first thing, all right, the very, very first thing that you have to have, that your team has to be good at, is how do you turn more contacts into conversations and quotes? And so the number one thing I'm going to tell you on the elevator pitch, and I'm going to give you a few examples here in just a second, is you have to assume the quote. Okay, the more you can assume the quote, the more quotes you're going to do. So when your team is calling those internet leads, or they're cold calling, or they're calling referrals, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Customer, this is Michael from XYZ Insurance Company giving you a call today. We've been helping a ton of people out on their auto and homeowners insurance. I'd love to do the same for you today. Are you still at 123 Main Street? All right, 123 Main Street. So who you are, why you're calling, straight into verifying information. What you are not going to do, you're never, ever going to ask, hey, would you like a quote today? Hey, your quotes came back great. You still in the market for insurance? Erase that from your vocabulary. You have to go straight from who you are, how you can help them. And I'm going to give you another hook real fast. Even though I don't sell based off of saving people money, and I would encourage you not to sell based off of saving people money, because look, how you acquire business is how business leaves you. So if you acquire business off of saving people money, they're going to leave you when they save money. You want to make sure that you are proposing, but you have to hook something. You have to hook them. You actually have to get them interested in a conversation for you. So hey, Mr. and Mrs. Customer, this is Michael from XYZ Insurance Company. Been calling people, saving them X. Let's just say, hey, all right. So, hey, this is Michael from XYZ Insurance Company giving you a call today. Been helping a ton of people on their auto and homeowners insurance rates. On average, I'm saving people $675 a year. Are you still at 102 Main Street? So you see what I did there? I gave a big, bold claim. Now the claim needs to be truthful, but on average, what are you saving? You can get that from your company information. Now, once you get them to say, yep, that's my address, great. Then you're going to go into, and what kind of cars do you drive? Okay, they're going to say the cars. Then you go into the rapport building conversation. Now, this is the part of the process that so many people struggle with. This is the conversation, because most people, most producers, most people that have never been trained, what do they want to do? They want to just verify information for the quote. The problem with just verifying information for the quote is you're not building any commonalities with the customer or with the prospect. You're not any different than the Geicos and Progressives of the world. If you just say, great, what kind of cars do you drive? Who are the drivers in the household? What are their date of birth? How many miles do you drive that car? Do you own or rent your house? That is boring. You're boring. You're not different. If you're not different, you're weak. If you're not unique, you are going to lose. All right. So you have to be different. You have to make sure that you are building rapport with the customer. So after I verify, hey, so what kind of cars do you drive? And they'll say something. I'll say, hey, so how long have you lived in the area? What do you do for a living? So kind of the four: family, occupation, recreation. You have to build rapport with the customer. And I understand on this multi-line sales conversation, a lot of you are like, I just actually got to ask this weekend when we were presenting live. Well, Michael, how about when they try to rush you off the phone? Don't give them the opportunity to rush you off the phone. When they say, hey, how long is this going to be? Hey, I only need a little bit more information. So tell me, how long have you lived in the area? I don't say, hey, it's going to be 5 minutes. Hey, it's going to be, no, it's only going to be a little bit of time, Mr. and Mrs. Customer. So how long have you lived in the area? What do you do for a living? You go straight to the quote. Your job is to take objections and agree. I'm with you. I get it. Hey, Mr. and Mrs. Customer, this ain't going to last very long. I just need a little bit of information. So how long you lived in the area? Bam, we get them right back to the sales process. So 80% of your time needs to be spent building rapport with the customer. This is probably the exact opposite of what a lot of you are currently doing. A lot of you are spending 80% of the time getting the information needed for a quote, and you're only building rapport, if at all, 20% of the time. You need to flip your mindset, flip this equation. 80% of the conversation needs to be about, hey, who are you? How can I help? What are you looking for? What do we have in common? People do business with people they know, they like, and they trust. Okay. So 20%, get that information needed for a quote. The types of cars, the VIN numbers if you need it, the date of birth, all that good stuff. Okay. So next, you're going to move on to the hot button. Now, the hot button is going to be the piece of the conversation that you're going to stick into the rapport building process. What has got the customer shopping today? What has got the customer shopping? And guys, look, I know this doesn't necessarily have anything to do with multi-lining right now, but it does. Because the more you find out about the customer, the more information you have, the more powerful that is in making sure that you are going to be giving products that align with your customer. So what's got your customer shopping? And look, I know that 99.9% of people, when you ask the question, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Customer, besides price, tell me what's important to you. What do they say? They say, price. I'm just looking for a better rate. So this is your job as the insurance professional to, hey, I'm with you, Mr. and Mrs. Customer, and I'm going to give you the best rate I can today. But tell me, when it comes to the claim process, if you ever wreck your vehicle, what do you expect out of me? What do you expect out of the company? What do you expect that claim experience to look like? And they're going to give you a high-level answer. Well, I expect you to take care of it. Oh, great. Tell me what that means exactly. When you say me to take care of it, what does that look like? What is good claim service going to look like to you? So really dig in, all right? And I can't go into all this because we're on a short time frame here, but you have to dig in. Another one. Hey, Mr. and Mrs. Customer, I'm with you. I understand. I'm going to give you the best price I can today with the best coverage. But at the end of the day, my job is to make sure you're adequately protected and make sure that you're getting the customer service you receive. Speaking of customer service, what does great customer service look like to you? What are you going to expect out of me when you call and you have a problem or a question? What does that look like? Get them talking about things that are important to them and also what you as an insurance professional in your agency are great at, okay? So you got to find the hot button, or a pain point is what a lot of other insurance professionals and sales coaches out there will call it. So hot button, pain point. Then we go into qualifying the lead. So what you've noticed is look, you're probably 5 to 7 minutes into a conversation right now. Probably 5 to 7 minutes into a conversation right now. And we haven't started the presentation. Price hasn't been brought up. You don't want to give price before you tell a customer why. Because you sell an intangible product. If you just start with price, that's all the customer is focused on. So you have to make sure that, hey, you're building rapport, you're getting the information needed to make sure your quote is updated. And then you qualify the lead. Mr. and Mrs. Customer, If I'm able to give you better coverage today for the same or better price, is there any reason why you wouldn't get started with us today? So you're fishing for those early objections. You're trying to figure out, hey, is he or she going to give me any objections when I present the price and try to go for the sell, go for the close? This is extremely powerful. Most people are going to say, nope, that sounds great. But you will get a few people that say, oh, you know, I'll have to talk to my spouse about it, or I'd like to go talk to the other agent about it, my current agent. Right there, you know, now this is not when you try to overcome the objection. You make a note. You already know, hey, when I go to close, they're going to give me this objection. I need to be prepared for it. So you are fishing for the objection. Okay. Now, insurance professionals have one of two ways to go now. You can either keep the customer on the phone and continue with going into the presentation process, or you let them off the phone and call them back. If you let them off the phone, you have to give them a reason to answer the call back. What I mean by that is, Mr. or Mrs. Customer, is there any reason why you wouldn't be available in 15 minutes to take my call? They say, yep, that works great. Or they'll say, no, give me a call at this time. Perfect. Whatever they say, Mr. or Mrs. Customer, again, I've got amazing news. Everything is looking amazing. Actually, in our conversation, it looks like you're going to be eligible for some more discounts. I really look forward to working with you. Mr. or Mrs. Customer, before I let you off the phone, can I get your word that you will not go with anyone before you hear from me? You are asking another confirmation question. Can I get your word that you will not go with any other insurance company before you hear from me? So for those folks that work internet leads, this is an absolute must if you let them off the phone. If you let them off the phone, you need to make sure you are qualifying them, okay? So let's move on. And I'll also say, if you let them off the phone, 15-minute callback max. You have to call them back in 15 minutes. So now let's get into the actual fun part, the presentation. Now, before I get into the presentation, I'm gonna give you some tips. And these tips are to help lead us into that multi-lining masterclass that we're talking about today. If you want to set yourself apart from the competition, always quote more coverage, always quote more policies than they currently have. Apples to apples is trash. You never ever want to quote apples to apples. If you're quoting apples to apples, all that means is that you care about the price and that you think the customer, that's all they care about. You're not doing your due diligence. You're not doing what you signed up for as an insurance professional. And if all you care about is saving people money, insurance is going to be an extremely tough career for you. Why? For example, over the next 24 to 36 months, what the data is showing is every insurance company, doesn't matter who you represent, is going to be taking steady rate increases due to our current environment. That's 24 to 36 months of extremely tough conversations if all you're concerned about is, hey, can I save you money? Insurance probably isn't for you if all you're concerned about is, can I save you money? They might as well just go with a Geico or a Progressive, okay? So that's why you always have to give more coverage, and that's why you always have to give more policies. If you're not quoting more coverage and more policies, you are setting yourself up for failure. You're setting yourself up for failure if you don't do that. The whole job here is to set yourself up for success and set the customer up for success. So when you go into the presentation, all right, when you go into the presentation, just some presentation basics here. You have to be enthusiastic. You have to be enthusiastic. If you're not genuine, and it has to be genuine. I'm not saying fake enthusiastic. You have to be genuinely excited about what you're about to do for the customer. So you start the conversation off with, if you want to, after you qualify the lead, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Customer, again, thank you so much for the opportunity. I've got amazing news for you, okay? Or if you let them off the phone and call them back, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Customer, I've got some amazing news for you today. So you start the conversation off with enthusiasm. You are talking about insurance. Insurance is boring. Most people want to they just want to scratch their face. They want to peel their face off. Like insurance, we're talking auto and home insurance. No one likes to talk about that. So you have to make it exciting. You have to make it interesting. If you don't, the customer is not going to listen to you. The prospect's not going to listen to you. And the likelihood of you closing that sale is very unlikely. So start with enthusiasm. Enthusiasm sells. And then you lead into disturbing complacency is what I like to teach and call it. Disturbing complacency. So, for example, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Customer, I've got amazing news. Now, before we get into it, I've got to say that your current coverage really worries me. Or, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Customer, I've got amazing news for you today. Everything came back looking great. I've got to tell you, though, a red flag popped up with your current coverage. Now, do you see what I did there? I got enthusiastic, I got excited, then I settled down. I settled down into the disturbing complacency. So that voice control, the voice emotion, okay? So going from high to low. When you get really good at this, your prospect on the other end of the phone is going to say, what do you mean they worry you? Or what red flag are you talking about? Well, Mr. and Mrs. Customer, do you remember how I said my number one job is to make sure you're adequately protected? And then you're going to go into that liability conversation, okay? And one thing, we don't have time today, but within the liability conversation, this is when you need to get really good at storytelling, okay? What story can you tell? What 30-second to 1.5 minute story can you tell that you put the customer into the conversation around, these are your current coverages, and in the event of an accident, this is how they would pay out, and this is what you would be liable for, versus what I'm proposing is this, and you replay the story, okay? So story selling. So this is when I want to get into the first multi-line sales conversation. So let's pretend like you want to help someone out with life insurance, and you're quoting $250, $500, $100 on an auto policy, okay? Or an umbrella, whatever you want to do. For examples, I'm going to do $250, $500, $100 just to make it easy. When you get done with the liability conversation, you go straight into, now, Mr. and Mrs. Customer, just like we just talked about, you'd be protected up to $250,000. Now, what that means is, okay, you already know what it means, protects you from lawsuits, but let's pretend like the individual you hit passed away and didn't go home to their family. Their family would receive a check for $250,000. Now, Mr. and Mrs. Customer, I want to make sure that in the event of an accident and you pass away, or really regardless of an accident, if you pass away and don't come home to your family, that your family also receives a tax-free check for $250,000. And so included in the quote today is going to be a $250,000 life insurance policy, so that regardless of what happens, your family also gets a check for $250,000. Does that make sense, Mr. and Mrs. Customer? Bam, you just multi-line that customer, really easy. Is that easy? Like, if you guys are enjoying this, please, I forgot to say this in the very beginning, with this not being live and in person, it's hard for me to judge the room. If you guys are enjoying this, please stick some fire emojis into the comment section or into the Q&A. Let me know that you're getting some value from this. That also fires me up. But did you see how easy that transition was? And then you would go straight from the transition of life insurance back into the auto policy. So great, Mr. and Mrs. Customer. Uninsured motorist, underinsured motorist. You go through all the boring stuff, but you have to educate the customer on what you're doing for them. Now, at the very end of the auto conversation, you also want to include a fire policy. Okay. So always quote auto fire. That's a minimum. Auto fire, maybe auto life if you're in an area that can't write fire, you're not competitive with fire, but always quote multiple products in the conversation. Okay. So bam, you get through the auto, you presented life. Now let's get into the fire product. Or let's pretend like you haven't quoted life yet and you go into a homeowner's product. Now, one thing is no price has been brought up. I haven't said how much the auto is going to be. I haven't said how much the life insurance is. And so let's pretend like you're like, great, Mr. and Mrs. Customer, next I want to talk a little bit about the homeowner's insurance policy. And they say, time out. How much is that auto policy? Mr. and Mrs. Customer, that's the great part, and that's the best part about this. However, the price is actually on the other screen. Let me get through this real fast. We'll save the best part till the very end. So on your homeowners, Mr. or Mrs. Customer, you see how I did that? You as the insurance professional have to control the conversation. You are in control of the conversation. The customer is not in control of the conversation. The customer is not the insurance professional. The customer doesn't know anything about insurance. It is your job to control the conversation and educate the consumer on what you're doing for them and why you're the best fit for their situation? How can you solve their problem? How can you close the gap? That's your job as an insurance professional. So why I want to bring up homeowner. Okay, so bam, we go into the homeowners conversation. Here's another easy how-to on how to multi-line that sales conversation. And the transition's easy. Hey, Mr. or Mrs., right after the tow conversation or whatever conversation you end the auto, great, Mr. or Mrs. Customer. Next, we're going to talk about your homeowners, Mr. or Mrs. Customer. Go straight into it. And so if you don't want to multi-line the customer right here, great, Mr. or Mrs. Customer, the first thing with a homeowner's policy is going to be the dwelling coverage. That means that if your house burns down tomorrow, we want to make sure you have enough coverage to rebuild your house, okay? That's how you would transition to that statement. Super easy transition. Now, let's pretend like you want to have a life insurance conversation right here. Okay, this is really easy, really simple transition. Mr. or Mrs. Customer, next I want to talk about the homeowner's policy. Now, before we get into the homeowner's policy, Mr. or Mrs. Customer, you had told me that you owe roughly about $375,000 on that house, right? Great. Okay, they're going to answer yes. Great. Well, hey, Mr. or Mrs. Customer, let me ask you real fast. In the event something happened to you or your spouse, who is your mortgage payoff protector plan through? Meaning that if something happened to you or your spouse and one of you passed away, that the surviving spouse would have enough money to pay off the mortgage on the home? Well, no one. Well, what are you talking about, Michael? Well, that's exactly what I want to talk about today and what's actually included in the quote today, Mr. or Mrs. Customer, because 99% of people I talk to don't have a mortgage payoff protector plan in place. And so included in the quote today, Mr. or Mrs. Customer, are going to be two $375,000 mortgage payoff protector plans, also known as life insurance. Now, at the end of the conversation, I'll give you more details around this life insurance plan when we get everything started today, but let's just go ahead and cover what your home's covered for, Mr. or Mrs. Customer. Does that make sense? Great. Did you see that transition? And you can even go into that a little bit more. You could ask some more disturbing complacency questions. Mr. or Mrs. Customer, do you find yourself being responsible for providing for your family financially? Great. Well, hey, what do you have in plan? What do you have in place to make sure that if something happens to you, your mortgage can be paid off? So your family doesn't have to worry about how they're going to make the next mortgage. If they're going to have to sell the house and move school districts, well, I don't have anything. Great. Included in the quote today is going to be two $375,000 life insurance policies, otherwise known as mortgage payoff protector plan. So in the event something happens to you or your spouse, you pass away, you don't come home to your family, the surviving spouse in your family knows that the house is taken care of, that they never have to move. The surviving spouse would get a check for $375,000. Does that make sense, Mr. or Mrs. Customer? Great. I'll give you more details at the end around that policy, Mr. or Mrs. Customer, but let's go ahead and get on to the homeowner's policy. You see how easy that was? You see that transition statement from auto to home, back into life. Now we're going back into the homeowner's product. Super, super simple. Okay. So the homeowners, same thing. You go all the way through. Now, no price has been brought up yet. We need to go into value. Okay. And I know this class is more about multi-lining, and I wanted to give you those how-tos. So the biggest thing with the presentation is you need to have a proposal that is all the products that you're going to discuss. You need to have everything ready for them. So auto renters, let's say you do an auto life renters or an auto home life, whatever it is, maybe an auto home plup life, whatever it is, it's all in that presentation, and you've never done any pricing yet. You haven't talked about quotes yet. You're still strictly discussing what's in it for the customer. And I promise you, for those out there that are like, there's no way you can have this conversation with an internet lead. You can, I promise you. We teach this to thousands of insurance professionals across the country, and it works. You just have to be a professional. You have to control the conversation. You have to make sure you're at the top of your game. Okay. So next you go into value statements. So value, this is where you're going to take value and what you found out about the customer. So what did you find out about the customer? How does your office? So this is when you brag about your office and about your company. Now I'm going to tell you, I would brag more about you and your office than I would about the company you represent. Brand loyalty is at an all-time low. Brand loyalty is at an all-time low amongst consumers. It only continues to go lower, especially with younger people. So people are going to do business with you, the insurance professional, the one on the other end of the phone. You need to talk about how you and your agency best fit them and their needs, their pain points. How are you going to solve it? Yes, you're going to make sure through liability they're protected from lawsuits. Yes, you're going to make sure that the homeowners or renters is covered. Yes, if you're going to quote the financial services product, that hey, their family is protected with life insurance or their home can be paid off. But what type of customer service are you going to provide the customer? How are you different from what they currently are receiving? How can you make sure that you are providing that great customer service they can look forward to? How can you make sure that when it comes claim time, you're the best person for the job? This is when you would tell them all about your agency. I'm going to give you a challenge to always bring up a minimum of three value statements around why you are better than what they currently have and what they can expect from working with you and why you're so amazing. Okay. Then you take 15 seconds, you're going to recap the conversation. So Mr. and Mrs. Customer, for everything we talked about today, we're giving you 4 times the coverage on the auto. We're giving you the mortgage payoff protectors plans. We gave you the $1 million in liability on the home, plus the replacement costs and some of those additional endorsements, like the backup of a sewer policy. Now, we're going to be able to do all of this, Mr. Customer or Mrs. Customer, and the autos and the life insurance are only going to be $250 a month. The homeowner is going to be $2,000 a year. How do you typically like to pay for your insurance? I like to pay for it monthly. Great. What day of the month does it like to come out? 15th. Great. Mr. and Mrs. Customer, what we can do is we can go ahead and get this started for you today. And every month after this month, it'll automatically pull on the 15th. Do you want to put that on your Visa, MasterCard, or American Express? Now, that's a longer winded one. That's not as direct. I personally like to be more direct. And so I want to teach you that one too. So Mr. and Mrs. Customer, for everything we gave you today, the auto and life is going to be $250 a month. The homeowners is going to be $2,000 a year. Do you want to put that on a Visa, MasterCard, or American Express today? You're going straight into the sell. Okay, straight into the sell. This is really, really important. You never, ever, ever, okay, never, ever, ever want to say after you present, it's going to be $250 for the auto and life, $2,000 for the home. What do you think about that? You have any questions? You get any other quotes? Erase that from your vocabulary. Just like you assume the quote, you're going to assume the sell, okay? You present the price and you go straight into the close. You want to put that on a Visa, MasterCard, or American Express, okay? So before I get into closing techniques, one statistic I haven't shared with you yet, and I want to share this with you as to why apples to apples is trash. 90% of consumers surveyed say they are willing to pay more for a product if they find value in it. 9 out of every 10 people surveyed say they are willing to pay more for a product if they find value in it. And that's exactly what this sales conversation does. It is going to provide an immense amount of value to your customer because they've never once, more than likely, been educated on any of their insurance policies. They've never once been quoted more policies. They've probably never had a life insurance conversation. So this is your job as the insurance professional to educate and add value and solve problems. And if you do that, people are willing to pay. I just posted something on social media yesterday of a Weaver Sales Academy producer that started 3 months ago. She quoted an auto home plup. Auto was the same price. The home and umbrella were over $1,000 more a year. She closed it. Because if you sell off value, your customer buys on value. If you sell on price, your customer buys on price. So I want to reiterate that. All right. So I'll get off my tangent. All right. Well, actually, one more interesting statistic. So I have a storytelling coach that I hired. Did you know that 96% of people surveyed, and he says the other 4% are lying, but 96% of people surveyed say they buy off of emotion. They buy off of emotion. 96% of people. Why I'm telling you this is storytelling within that conversation, educating, making the customer feel confident, feel like they know what they're buying, giving them more products and more coverage so that they feel secure. That is going to increase your likelihood of closing more business. By utilizing this conversation, all you have to do is have 3 quality conversations a day. If you have this full-blown conversation 3 times a day, you're going to have at least a 30% closing ratio. You quote 3 people a day, you're going to close 1. How beneficial would it be to you personally and to your agency if every producer in your agency closed 1 household a day? That was on average 3 to 5 products. Y'all would crush every goal you have in place. Okay, you would crush it. Your team would be more confident in what they were doing. They would be more fulfilled. They're going to be more passionate. That's what it's all about. It's from going from frustrated to confident, from struggling to success. Okay, so now let's cover the closing techniques, because I want to give you guys some tangible closing techniques as well. People always love closing techniques. So the very first closing technique is going to be what I call the ascending close. The ascending close, that is asking confirmation questions throughout the conversation. Mr. and Mrs. Customer, would you agree that this coverage is better for your situation? Well, yes, I would. Well, why would you say that it's better for your situation, Mr. or Mrs. Customer? Actually have them tell you why it's better for their situation. Mr. or Mrs. Customer, would you agree that this is much more coverage than you currently have? Yes. Well, why would this better coverage be better for your situation, Mr. or Mrs. Customer? So these are what I call like the bobblehead close. So you ever seen a bobblehead going down the road? That's the same thing. You ask confirmation questions throughout the presentation to get the customer saying, yes, guys, I'm fired up right now. All right, so let's go. You guys are enjoying this, put some fire emojis in here. So next, we have the assumption close, okay? Always, always, always assume the sell. You all heard me. Hey, Mr. and Mrs. Customer, for everything we're talking about today, the auto and life is going to be $250 a month. The home's going to be $2,000 a year. You want to put that on a Visa, Mastercard, American Express. The more simple you make the buying process on the customer, the more sales you're going to make. Now, let's be honest. Follow-up is part of this. Objections are part of this. I'm not the guy that's going to say, you do that every time you close 100% of the business. That's not realistic. All right. You're going to have to learn how to overcome objections. You're going to have to learn follow-up strategies. Now, I want to teach you how to overcome objections real fast. Now, overcoming objections, you have to remember, everything leading up to the sell is emotional. It's emotional driven. Once you ask for payment information, everything after that is logical. There is no more selling in the conversation. It is logical. Why should they buy from you today? How can you solve their problems? You take the emotion out of it. You close off of logic. I hope that that makes sense. So everything leading up to the close emotional. Once you go into asking for payment information, everything after that is logical. There's no more reselling the product. There's no more of that. There's no more talking. Like, the more you talk in the close, the less likely you are to close the business. It's going to be one of the best tips I give you today. Okay, so Mr. or Mrs. Customer, I understand you need to think about it. Let me ask you real fast on a scale from 1 to 10. 1 to 10. 1 being you have no interest in the product. 10 being, man, you're ready to get everything going today. Where are you at on that scale? A 7? Great. Hey, Mr. and Mrs. Customer, I know you have a lot of important things going on. Let's just take time out of the equation to get this going. You want to put it on a Visa, Mastercard, American Express. So that's what we call the 1 to 10 close. So anything above a 6, you go straight into, hey, let's take time out of the equation, get this going. You want to put that on a Visa, Mastercard, or American Express. Anything less than a 6, Mr. or Mrs. Customer, that scores a lot lower than what I was hoping for. What are you looking for that I'm currently not providing you? So this is where you go to fish for the real objection. Like, what's going on? You're not on the same page. One of my other favorite think about it objections. Mr. or Mrs. Customer, I understand you need to think about it. Being a consumer myself, I've actually told people in my profession, I need to think about it as well. Now, there's typically 3 reasons why people tell me they need to think about it, and I fall in one of those 3 categories as well. So Mr. or Mrs. Customer, it's either 1, the answer is yes, and you're afraid to make a decision too fast due to buyer's remorse. The answer is either no, and you don't want to hurt my feelings, or You don't have enough information to be able to make a decision and you still have questions. So Mr. and Mrs. Customer, out of those three options, which one are you? Then you just get silent. If they say I still have questions, well, great. Mr. and Mrs. Customer, thinking about it is not going to give you any more information to be able to get a yes or a no. What questions do you have for me right now so we can get this taken care of for you? If they answer a yes, Mr. and Mrs. Customer, thank you so much. Let's go ahead and take time out of the equation and get this going. You want to put it on Visa, MasterCard, American Express. If they answer no, this just isn't for me, well, Mr. and Mrs. Customer, what can I do to turn that no into a yes today? If they say nothing, great, follow up with them. Now, let's pretend like, all right, so this is asking for the sell 2 times. We got to ask for the sell minimum of 3 times in every single conversation. Mr. and Mrs. Customer, I'm with you. I get it. You need to think about it. Let's go ahead and put something on the calendar for tomorrow. So you always want to schedule 48 hours follow-up time if you are going to follow up with the customer. Now I'm going to go into another closing technique. What time works best for you tomorrow, Mr. and Mrs. Customer? Noon, great. Is there any reason why you won't be able to have a yes or a no for me tomorrow, Mr. and Mrs. Customer? No. Great. Mr. and Mrs. Customer, I just want to say thank you so much for the opportunity today. I really appreciate your time. And Mr. and Mrs. Customer, I really hope that your answer is yes, because I really believe that we will get along, that the coverage I'm giving you is 10 times better than you currently see in our customer service. Sounds like it's a lot better than what you're currently receiving. However, Mr. and Mrs. Customer, if the answer is no, I want to give you permission to tell me no right now. You're not going to hurt my feelings. This is just business, but I don't want you to waste your time, and I don't want to call you and continue to call you and you never answer. So I want to give you permission to say no. So if it's no, go ahead and tell me that. And if it's a yes, let's just go ahead and take time out of the equation and get this going. You want to put it on Visa, MasterCard, or American Express. Super easy, to the point, logical. Never, ever resell. All right, so we just went through the whole gambit. Elevator pitch, 80-20, hot button, qualifying lead, presentation value, recap, close. I gave you guys some really good statistics. Right now, what I would love is if you guys had any questions at all, and I also want to go back to that follow-up, make sure if you follow up with the customer, 48-hour rule. I can't tell you how important the 48-hour rule is in tracking data of not only my personal agency, me as a producer, but also the agents I work with. 75% closing ratio. If you can follow up with somebody and get them on the phone within the 48 hours, it drops all the way down to the 30% range from the 3 to 5 day range. And after 5 days, it drops all the way down to like 13%. So that's why 48 hours is so important, and you have to control the conversation within the close and within the follow-up. Thank you guys so much. Let me know what questions you got.
All right, Michael. So I'm going to come in hot with the questions. This is great, by the way. We're getting a lot of fantastic feedback, and I'm just going to start hitting you with some questions here. And then if anybody would like to schedule a time to speak with Michael or his team afterwards, you can also email him, michael@weaversa.com. And I'm going to drop a Calendly link in the chat as well. And you can simply click on it and schedule a call with Travis on his team. So Michael, first question I've got coming at you has to do with holding their team accountable to actually, fulfilling this and actually getting it done. Like this agent's basically saying, hey, it's an anonymous attendee. I like the idea behind these conversations. They're fantastic, but how can I hold my team accountable? Would WSA play a part in that? So I know that's going to be a big question across the board, is how do I put this into practice with my team and actually reinforce it ongoing?
Yeah. So I love that question. I actually have this conversation a lot one-on-one. And so my biggest feedback for you is the lack of accountability is costing you paychecks. The lack of accountability is costing your customers coverage. Your lack of accountability is having the agency of your dreams. Okay. So you have to hold your team accountable to this. If they don't want to do it, they're probably not a good fit for your culture. But here, let me go into this. If it's important to you, it's going to be important to them. This is an expectation. This is a non-negotiable. This is not like optional. It is an expectation. It is non-negotiable. It has to have your buy-in first, and then it has to have the team's buy-in. And if the team refuses to do it, guess what? There's hundreds of thousands of people looking for a job that would love an insurance career, that would love a recession-proof career, that would love to be in the most noble profession in the world. So that's the biggest feedback I have for you. So some accountability practices. So Weaver Sales Academy, how we help with accountability, all right, because that's a great question, is number one, we give you the tools to be successful. We have a video library that we stick you into a 60-day plan, depending on your needs, that's going to teach this conversation. But not only that, we then back it with live trainings every single week. So we're staying in front of your team every single week. So you have to hold them accountable to the trainings. But the reason why they're probably not doing this is because they're not confident with it. They're not comfortable with it. Not saying that that's your fault necessarily, but to make sure your team is set up for success, you have to make sure that they're truly set up for success, that you don't just practice every now and then, that training is a non-negotiable in your office and you do it every single week. Okay. But I will reiterate here, because I love these conversations with agents. Lack of accountability, wanting your team members to like you or whatever your reasoning is going on inside of your mindset, because we've all been there. Look, personally, I was not a great accountability manager. Okay. I had to hire somebody to do this for me. So that's my other thing. If you're not great at accountability, hire someone to do the managing for you. But your team needs managed. Your team needs to be held accountable. Because not only are they sacrificing their paychecks, but you're also sacrificing your living, your dream life, by not having steps in place, accountability measures in place.
Love it, Michael. That's fantastic. And really, really appreciate this. This is great. Another one coming down your pipeline here on the questions is, how can I grow the confidence in my team's conversations to talk more like you? And I think what they're referring to is like the enthusiasm, the delivery, the level of communication that's happening. Like, obviously, you didn't come out of the womb talking like you talk, right? So like, what are some of the things that you did in your career to build that confidence?
Yeah, that's a great question. So number one, sign up with Weaver Sales Academy. I promise you that's the biggest, and this is just not to pitch Weaver Sales Academy, but I truly believe that we are the best coaching and training organization in the world for insurance professionals. We have the best delivery. We have the best content. We're constantly staying in front of your team. If you want your team to be more like me, get them in front of people like me. Okay. That's the number one thing. Now, some things that I personally did early on in my career, and this is going to be hard because they have to want to develop. They have to want to also be able to grow. But I listen to Brian Tracy, The Psychology of Selling, every single day in my car, from the way to work and the way home from work, every day for 30 minutes. So I got an hour of training every single day for 18 months in a row. This is before my wife and I were married. She literally got in the car for the first time to go to our very first date. And she goes, "What is on the radio?" And I'm like, "That's Brian. That's my boy, Brian Tracy, man. Like, we learning." She goes, "We're not learning tonight. We're going on a date." I'm like, "Okay, that's fair enough. That's fair enough. But I'm serious right now." So, and also conferences, there's lots of free webinars. The more people you can get in front of your team, like myself, the more likely they are to do this. Okay. But the biggest thing I can tell you is repetition enhances learning. You just can't learn once and then expect them to do it. You constantly have to have the material in front of them. That is the number one way that you're going to set yourself up for success and set your team up for success. The more you can get them in front of people on a daily basis, okay, or a weekly basis. So I'd love to partner with you in 2023, but worst case scenario, go to YouTube, find some YouTube stuff online. Like, do it. Get them in front of something every single day or every single week that you would like to replicate within your agency.
Love it. And I'm going to bring us one more question, and then we're going to kind of wrap up and go through contact details one more time. And this will be sent out to all the registrants via recording. And if you need a copy of it and you can't find it anywhere, or for some reason it makes it to your spam inbox, please feel free to send me or Tim an email directly. We can get it right to you. Either Andy@teamhired.com or Tim@teamhired.com. But Michael, final question for the day. The question is, with the Weaver Sales Academy, because I know there's some agents on here hearing that name for the first time, which is great. And we have an attendee asking, what are some of the factual results or deliverables that you've been able to show with WSA? And this is coming from somebody who I'm sure is looking at you from a distance going, okay, what could I expect if I became Weaver Sales Academy client and I participated with my team on a regular basis? I mean, what kind of results are you guys seeing so far?
That's a really, really great question. So again, in my opinion, we're the only organization from a true like university standpoint, actually training modules that go take you through the modules of learning. Plus we back it with live. So we've tracked the data over the last 18 months. On average, over the first 90 days of being with us, producers are increasing their auto fire life production by 40%. And on average, without taking into bonuses, because every company we work with, their bonus structures are a little bit different. On average, agencies, okay, just in new business commission within the first 12 months of working with us are roughly making an additional $38,000 a year in just new business commissions. Again, that has nothing to do with your bonuses. I was talking to an agent, and this was a really good agent. He actually has 2 agencies, and he started his one new office 2 years before he joined us, and his legacy had 5 years. And over the last 2 years, I was talking to him this weekend, he's made an additional $135,000 based off of working with Weaver Sales Academy. That's commissions and bonuses included. But his one agency went from really just like, it was a good agency, but now they're top 3% in the company. And his legacy went from being a top 3% company to now a top 100 company or agency in the company. So I'll tell you, you get what you put out of it, just like anything else. I'm not the guy to stand up here and say secret sauce is magic bullets. I don't believe in that shit. Like what there is there's work. And we have a proven process and a proven system. If you do the work, if your team does the work, you will see results. I can guarantee it.
Awesome. Well, Michael, I think that's kind of our stopping point that we're coming to today. We have about 2 minutes left. So one of the things I wanted to do is just reiterate, Tim and I both come from the training background. Obviously, Michael's deep into the training space. And what we've learned is, all of this is going to be about committing to a plan and longevity. It's repetition. It's getting this ingrained into your agency. So hopefully today's a great starting conversation and a great starting point. I know I took a lot away from this. We're getting blown up in comments and DMs and text messages right now. Just great feedback, Michael. This has been great. But before we go, if people are trying to get a hold of you specifically or your team, can we one more time just give everyone sort of the different areas they can reach out to you?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and again, Tim and Andy, thank you so much for your time. Before anyone leaves, I would ask, put one takeaway in the comment section or the Q&A section. What's one takeaway you're going to take away today and implement immediately? The reason I ask this question is because it's going to reiterate it to you so you don't forget. So what's one takeaway that you're going to take away today? Now, our contact information, again, Google us, Weaver Sales Academy. We have over 120 or 35-star reviews. You can get a hold of us at www.weaversa.com. Definitely the Calendly link for Travis. He's on my team. We have a team of 23 people behind us, so it's not like it's just me and Courtney. My email is michael@weaversa.com, and I'll also go ahead and give you my phone number. If you want to reach out to me, my phone number is 816-263-1412. All right, 816-263-1412. If you want to reach out to me, shoot me a text. That's fantastic. I'll also tell you, look, check us out on the Insurance Buzz podcast. We put out a ton of good information on that. Not only that, we're on every social media platform you can think of. Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, you name it, we're on there. We put out a lot of great free content every single day, really dedicated to you, specifically the insurance professional. So make sure you follow us, get to know us a little bit more. And I have a book called Game Changer. I think it's $13 on Amazon. Check it out. It actually has this process in it. Lots of good information in there as well.
Excellent. Well, Michael, thank you so much, very much, man. We really appreciate you being here. This has been great. We'd love to do it again with you in the near future. And we'll make sure to get all the giveaways and recordings and everything out. But man, I hope both of you guys have an amazing day. let us never sell a single product alone again, or at least attempt not to do that ever again. And I wish you guys a great rest of your week. And for everyone with us today, if you want to get permanent registration to this Elite Performer Club with Team Hire, just reach out to Tim or myself. We'll be happy to help you get enrolled for future speaking engagements. But have an amazing day, and thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks for the time, guys.
Hey, thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, Michael. Talk to you soon.